as I was at the foundation booth out at King of the Hammers, and a girl stopped by with a friend, and I said, did you know who Jessi Combs was? And her face started to quiver, and she started crying. I said, well, judging by your reaction, I can tell you did. And she goes, yeah, I came out to King of the Hammers, and I was trying to come see Jessi. She was on her way running back to her race car, and she stopped, and she took a knee, and she sat with me, and she asked me what my dreams were and what I wanted to do with my life. And we talked for what seemed like a long time. When the race is about to start, she's got to get in her race car. And I said, how did that impact you? She goes, I'm a welder for SpaceX now.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Smoking Tire Podcast. Sorry for the sound quality in this ad. I am on the road and doing it portable. This episode of the podcast is brought to you in part by Berryman Total Engine Tune-Up for gas and diesel. And why are we recommending Berryman Total Engine Tune-Up for gas and diesel? Because over time, gasoline and diesel fuels will break down and deteriorate. Untreated gas can be less potent, right? It can varnish the carburetor in an older car and possibly prevent your fuel system from working the way that it's meant to. Unwanted chemical reactions with aging fuel might also mean trouble over time. For instance, the evaporation of some volatile components within stored fuel might leave behind harmful deposits in your engine or stop your fuel from igniting properly in the engine after 3 or more months. And Berryman's Total Engine Tune-Up for gas and diesel is the solution. It eliminates any need for you to drain your fuel before storing it, and as fuel stabilizer, the Berryman product keeps your fuel fresh and preserves a properly balanced and stable environment. It's effective with any 2-stroke or 4-stroke gasoline or diesel engine in any season. In the fuel tank, it disperses moisture, cleans the injectors and carburetors, provides smoother top engine performance, and reduces the need for repairs. In the crankcase, Berryman Total Engine Tune-Up dissolves and dispenses gum, sludge, and other residues for better lubrication and longer oil life. And best of all, Berryman Total Engine Tune-Up stabilizes gasoline or diesel fuels for 1 year. That's why we recommend it, why I use it at Westside Collector Car Storage. And you can find Berryman products at all major automotive retailers. For more information, go to berrymanproducts.com. Folks, it's about that Rex MD, and you know where I'm going with this. It is about a stiff upper. And guys, we hate going to the doctor. It takes half a day to get it done. It sucks making appointments well ahead of time, validating parking in Beverly Hills. That's the unrelatable portion of the ad. And sometimes, let's be honest, you don't want to talk to your regular doctor about certain issues. And here's the thing. Most men's health issues have really simple solutions. And Rex MD is all about simple solutions. Rex MD makes getting generic and branded Viagra or Cialis easy. Everything's online. Even the prescription they deliver right to your door. No office visits, no talking to a receptionist. Super simple. Did you know Viagra can cost around $90 a pill? But Rex MD has generic Viagra for as low as just $2 a pill. Just fill out a quick medical questionnaire on their website, and a doctor will review your situation and prescribe you generic Viagra if appropriate. Your medication will get shipped right to your door with free 2-day shipping. It's fast, simple, and cheap, and you can access your U.S. licensed Rex MD physician anytime you need afterwards. Rex MD has helped over 300,000 guys get generic Viagra quickly and convenient. Rex MD just works, and it works the very first night. So, starter packs or generic Viagra or Cialis are now available for our viewers, but you have to go to rexmd.com/tire to get it started. That's rexmd.com/tire. Go to rexmd.com/tire today to get started with a starter pack prescription of generic Viagra or Cialis, and all orders come with free 2-day shipping. Rex MD is the authority in men's health. Last but certainly not least, love my Harry's. It's all about Harry's razors. The time of the year is coming where things really start to stack up and get busy. right? And all too often we find ourselves doing things just in time, whether it's back to school, wedding season, holiday prep, Christmas shopping. It's crazy. And you know what happens to me is I forget to buy razor blades. I find out when it's shaving time that I need razor blades. And that's why Harry's is super, super clutch and super in charge of cutting it close. You see what I did there? I love Harry's razors. They haven't bought an ad from us in a long time, but I'm glad they did because I have been buying Harry's razors off the record, off the books for several years now. I like the blades. I like the rubberized handles. I like the moisturizers and the shaving cream. I especially like to take the shaving cream on the road with me because it's not like an aerosol one out of a can. It's in a tube, which makes it good for carrying on airplanes. I like the convenience. You can choose how often to get refills of your Harry's product. The body wash is great, smells good. And right now, Harry's is selling for very, very cheap, a starter set for just $3. Plus, you get a free travel size body wash with the starter set. The set includes a 5-blade razor, a weighted handle, foaming shave gel, and a travel cover. $16 value for just $3. All you got to do is visit harrys.com/tire. And Harry's works good for me because I shave not just my face, but my whole head too. I can sometimes go through a blade in just one shave. That's why I need affordable blades, but I don't want to skip on quality. Your head is important when you're shaving it. Trust me, I've cut my head in the past and it is a bloody mess. Harry's 5-blade cartridges are awesome. Their shaving cream is awesome. And I love that rubberized handle that comes with the starter set. I've been using the same one for like 3 years. So no matter how busy things get this season, stay fresh with Harry's. Get your Harry's starter set today. Get that free travel size body wash for just $3 at harrys.com/tire. That's harrys.com/tire. All right, folks, on this episode of the podcast, Chris Otwell and Graham Suorsa are in studio. These guys are the directors of the new documentary, The Fastest Woman on Earth, about our old friend, the dearly departed Jessi Combs. It is streaming on HBO right now. Zack and I both watched the film. It is an amazing tribute to her life and legacy. It is beautifully done. It's historically very interesting. They tie a bunch of different narratives together, and it's a really great representation of her life. We talk about Jessi. We talk about some of the challenges in making the film. We talk about some key pivotal scenes in the movie, and overall, it is a great hour and a few minutes of radio with Chris Otwell and Graham Suorsa on the Smoking Tire Podcast. But thanks for making the time, guys. It's a very good film. It's very well made. It's obviously very sad because we know the ending already. But I watched it last night with my wife. Zack watched it I think 2 nights ago, and it's my first question is: had Jessi not died, was there still going to be a film called The Fastest Woman on Earth or something like it? Because it seems like there was a lot of beautiful and cinematic footage that was captured, on the scene at the time.
Absolutely. At first, when Jessi had the opportunity to get in the seat of the North American Eagle, it's something we as a team talked about a lot because it was, when we were filming for the list, we had an opportunity to get involved with a lot of the things that she was doing in life and make episodes out of it, whether it was Baja, King of the Hammers, and now Landspeed. So we went that first year, filmed the episode of Break a Landspeed Record for the list. And then in subsequent years, when she decided to continue to pursue that goal and that dream of hers, we partnered together 2013 to make a film, to tell her story, share it with the world. What the title was going to be was up in the air. How long it would take and how it would end, we didn't know. But what we knew was we were going to partner, tell this story as long as it took and wherever it took us.
Mm-hmm. When go ahead.
We were under the illusion that it was going to be like a one-off kind of thing. You go out there 1 year, she sets a record, like, oh, we got that in the can.
Not a 5-year process.
1 year turned into 2 to 3.
Yeah,
to
did they not have an episode of The List that was like some weird offbeat record that no one really cares about?
She won the 4-wheel. She got the fastest woman on 4 wheels distinction.
But was that for The List?
That was for The List.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
All right. I thought it was going to be like fastest, 90cc, moped or something
that's the
like
thing.
that.
I mean, there's so many distinctions with it and sanctioning bodies.
Yeah. You can get a record doing something that objectively is not that impressive. To go all the way for fastest woman on 4 wheels is a pretty lofty goal, especially for like a silly TV bit, right?
Right.
Well, and the TV was very clear. Like, listen, this is you doing you. We'll come along for the ride, but we're not asking you to do this for the show because
the stakes aren't quite the same as like get a car on 2 wheels in a parking lot.
Conversation around
that.
The
lawyers aren't like, this is not our idea. This is
right.
not
She's
our
like,
idea.
I'm doing this on my own, and we're just there to witness. The first run.
Yeah. It's I mean, land speed, Bonneville types. They're like a separate breed of human.
Yep.
I've been out there and talked to some of those folks, and they all seem kind of out of their minds. Whether they're getting in like something that used to be like a belly tank and they just like put wheels on it, or I've turned a fighter plane into a car and now we're going to go the speed of the fighter plane on the land.
It's the guys who got kicked off the track and they got nowhere else to go, you know, and this is like a place, this is like Burning Man for car people.
Like no one else will have you anymore,
And I think you see that in the film too with the land speed teams, is a lot of them, even Bonneville for that matter, for the time that we've spent out there, it's this long lead, long arc goal that is as much about hanging out with your friends, and iterating, right? Typically, engineers that want to iterate and get fractions of seconds and fractions of fuel economy and better over years. Really, it's not a short game.
No, and it's a weirdly low tech game, isn't it? Like, despite the fact that North American Eagle was a fighter plane. That notwithstanding, a lot of these guys are running high boys. It's a real kind of like traditionalist. They got flathead Fords in them and shit. It's not like they're doing some kind of new technology on the Salt. It's really about pushing that old technology, isn't it?
It's comfortable, for them, I think. There's a couple of teams that'll push it, like the Speed Demon guys. I mean, set like 440 miles an hour or something in a
obviously, if you're going that fast,
you look at the guts of that thing, you're like, oh, there's innovation here. This is built from the ground up. But a lot of them are like, it's backyard hot rod kind of stuff.
What was the background of the team that ran her car? Like, were they all? I know one was the IBM engineer, but like were there a lot of aerospace people in there?
A lot of aerospace engineers, data scientists, Boeing.
It was the intersection of aviation people and the Bonneville people.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that seems like I mean, a lot of these folks that get into racing or other things, they go, well, here's a place I can explore my mind and abilities outside of work, where like, at Boeing, they're not going to let you do this, but I can take my knowledge and apply it to this thing.
Well, in the early days of land speed racing with Craig Breedlove and some of the legendary days, those guys were engineers from the space program and the test pilot program and the Right Stuff era, and who were just like, screw working for the man. I'm going to go out in the desert and run this stuff on the ground and get as wild as we want to be. And, there's a spirit of like these really highly intelligent people just saying F it to the whole establishment and getting out on the flats,
And that's just it. They work in these really highly structured environments where stakes are high in aviation engineering and in building, and this is where their dream lived. This was hot rodding to them, and hot rodding at a level that they're accustomed to operating in their professional lives. And so I think that mix, it's the aviation engineers, the data scientists, and the hot rodders all came together to make this dream come true.
Yeah, the Andy Green, there's a bunch of clips of it in the film. When that thing does a sonic boom on land, that's like That's got to be like the most epic bit of instant feedback.
Well,
you know,
and those
like,
men turn into boys instantaneously.
Yeah.
And they jump in the back. Yeah.
And, you know, almost everybody else, you know, up to and including Jessi 30 or 25 years later or whatever it was, maybe more than that, I forget the timeline. You know, they need to go look at the data. They do a run and it's like, well, how fast do we go? I don't fucking know. Wait till we download this computer. But the sonic boom tells no lies.
Yeah, that was it. You knew.
Yeah. So that must have been like the most unbelievable bit of like binary, you know, achievement right then.
And they had the cameras out there too. They seemed to know when they were going to do it. They had been working up so incrementally, and their confidence had been building. And that's a very it's a very British way, I guess, of doing it in these like incremental steps. And then, I mean, you know, the Eagle had to do it too, but they were ready and the cameras were there and watching. Like when Jessi set records, like we were the only game in town out there. Like the world was not watching this.
Yeah,
this
you guys,
endeavor, you know?
they weren't doing it during Speed Week on the salt flats. It was kind of by yourself on a dry lake bed. Is that was that a scheduling thing? Was that to reduce externality as a pressure, or what's the deal there?
It was a few things. It had to do with permitting on the lake bed.
Right.
It had to do with the seasons where, you know, when the lake bed floods and everything washes around, flattens it out, it's got to dry out in time. If it doesn't flood, then the chances of having ruts and everything, it's just unfavorable conditions out there. And also deliberately not wanting to draw a crowd.
Yeah.
Because you know, there wasn't a whole lot of regulation out there. They had the permits they needed to be there to operate, but ultimately they were responsible for clearing the course. So, you know, are there tents out there? Are there people on dirt bikes? And so there were people at each mile and half mile down the whole course calling out. You hear a mile 1 clear, mile 2 clear, right? They're making sure for the safety of everybody that the course is clear, the conditions are favorable. But you know,
but like,
you don't want to draw a crowd.
You haven't closed the lake bed. Like
Correct.
other
No,
people
it's still
could.
public. There were
they
like
could be out
kite
there.
sailors.
Yeah.
And, oh my God,
That's okay. No problem.
I
It
had to
happens.
check that angle.
It happens.
There were other people out there,
Yeah.
and there were some years it was like we had to kind of delay and double check and triple check and clear the course because I mean, can you imagine?
No,
in
we
this
go out to
crowd-
El Mirage to like play with press cars. Like I've done like 185 miles an hour in a Panamera Turbo, and like I paid $15 to be in there, and like that's it.
Yeah.
Right.
And like there's a guy out there on a dirt bike, and there's a guy in an ATV, and there's a guy in this, and so you can go real fast without closing shit.
Yeah, and in this crowd, the aviation crowd, people were showing up in planes.
Oh.
Yeah,
too.
Which speaks to the
Oh,
fact
like
that
you mean to play around or
to land?
That's how they just get
I'm
there.
here.
land on the
Oh.
lake bed,
They land,
like bush pilot style.
Baller.
Yeah,
to come work on the team.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Why drive?
deliver parts and stuff
Right,
like
right,
that.
makes sense.
And the
Driving's
thing
for
is, like, you
suckers.
can't run this car at Bonneville. Bonneville, the conditions are too crappy. It's not long enough. So this is
Really?
one of the few places in the world with enough dry lake bed, and you know, of course, the question
It's like
really
11
raises
miles end to
ultimately
end,
wasn't
right?
enough, you know. But there's so few places you can do it, and it's hell and gone out there, at least 100 miles from civilization. Bonneville's accessible. It's like right off the highway.
Right.
You know? This place is the middle of nowhere, and you could never get like an organized, you know, kind of event out there beyond this team.
Tell
site.
that to the
But I think
Burning
they
Man
thrived.
people. I
in
was
that
gonna say, they
isolation.
talked-
Well, that's true. Yeah, you're
They
right.
talked a lot about Black Rock, but Burning
Yeah.
Man kind of, you know, for the same reasons, just the conditions were too bumpy out there.
Too many ruts and stuff.
Yeah.
Too many bikes.
Yeah. So I mean, once you
Too many naked people.
Too many left.
ever see that? You see that pile of left behind bikes? They always every year they say there's on Instagram. There's like a pile of the bikes. It's fucking crazy. That is only beaten by. I just saw something on Instagram of a barge going down the canals in Amsterdam with a crane just pulling clumps of bicycles out of the fucking canals because they just fall in.
Wow.
You know, from the side and just loading them on. And there's a pile that looks like the Burning Man pile, but instead of dust, it's algae.
Oh my God.
Or it's like
on
the scooters in Santa Monica and Venice.
Yeah,
turning into coral
100%.
Right.
100%. Yeah. But there's a lot of footage in this film that's like. I mean, did you guys have it? I mean, because she was such a, she was, for lack of a better word, a social media influencer on top of being a wrench and a driver and a TV host. So did you have trouble finding stuff, or was there just a glut of footage to begin with, and it was just a matter of going through it all?
It's really about finding the right stuff. You know, for us, we shot a lot of the lake bed footage ourselves very deliberately, cinematically, anamorphic lenses, drones, the whole thing. And Jessi would self-tape sometimes, knowing that, you know, we would have conversations with her, and she would go in for the MRI or if she was having issues, you know, because really her public persona was so sunny and positive, but we saw a lot of the challenges that she was facing in life as well. So it became
back injury.
Yeah,
sucks.
yeah. So those are things that we weren't there for, and so we had conversations with her about trying to capture those kinds of moments for herself, with herself for this film. So a lot of it was very deliberate in trying to capture those moments. But then there's some other things, you know, of course TV, but the story's not a whole lot about TV. Right?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, there's not very many clips from TV.
It's more about
There's
the
a couple
things you didn't know.
montages here and there.
You know,
and-
people weren't on the lake bed.
Yeah.
They weren't with her in the moments where things get vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys were obviously friends with her and worked with her for so
Very
long.
much so.
So was it brutal to go through all this footage and make the film, or was it cathartic in a way, or was it, you know, how did you guys get through that stuff?
I mean, it was definitely part of the process. It was hard, yeah, for sure. It was brutal.
Yeah.
I
was friends with her like this much, and
Yeah.
it was some parts of it, I mean, certainly from an hour and 33 to an hour and 34 into the film is very tough to watch, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But
well, and that was, yeah, our cameraman saw it, the camera saw it, she lived it, we lived it, so it was a thing we just had to face, particularly with that material. But then getting a large archive of Jessi's just personal stuff off her iCloud. Her family was super cooperative with us in terms of getting us material that she had, and there was a chronicle of like her whole life there. And yeah, leaning into some of that stuff was tough, you know, looking back at the old days, and there's so much potential there. But what you saw were these things you didn't realize till after she was gone. Her commitment to her vision, her plan for how this thing would take off, her plan for the role of the movie in preserving her idea, her legacy, her mission. Like, all of that was there. You look back at the signs. It's kind of like the bandana. You didn't even know it was there until we call it out at the end of the movie. If you go back and watch it again, the bandana is just always there. And that was the revelation of going through all that footage to me, was seeing all those things that we saw so clearly after she was gone, but the bricks were already laid, you know, years before.
boo, bad radio.
When you silence your phone, the alarms don't go off?
Yeah, they still,
Yeah,
because they want to wake you up.
I
Just
think
in
if
case
they did,
right now.
yeah, I think that people would be probably
I would
annoyed.
miss all the meetings.
Yeah.
Graham's missing a
Yeah,
minute
no,
right
when
now.
you know, condense all of her accomplishments into 100 minutes, it's a fucking life.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's a pretty rich life full of like all kinds of, you know, there's not a lot out there that she said that she wanted to do that she didn't get some kind of a crack at. You know, it's
She
pretty
was
impressive.
masterful at manifesting,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wonder how finding television helped with that, because I mean, if you bring TV cameras to stuff, they let you try things that you might, and even one guy on North American Eagle, you know, said it. He was like, she was a woman and she had a TV show,
Yep.
and we needed eyeballs on our shit, and so you know, it turns out she was qualified to do the job, of course, despite anything you could say against her for the, you know, those reasons, but like. You know, that plays
It was important to include that line in the movie to know that this is a thing she's always pushing against. No matter how capable she is, there is this perception that she has to overcome.
Well, but and of course, but in fairness to that dude, it's not like she had experience driving jet cars.
Here's the thing.
That was her first jet car, as far as I know.
Right. Here's the thing with Jessi when you look back. She, even prior to trade school, she got it in her head, I'm going to save the money, I'm going to go to trade school. Against all odds, she did it. She graduated first in her class. She gets out of trade school. She gets on a SEMA build. The SEMA build leads to a TV career, right?
Yeah.
What she was incredible at was stepping into an opportunity and transcending that opportunity into something greater than it could have been. And she did it time and time again. And that's what her trajectory was get an opportunity, say yes, step in, transcend it, and take it to a new level, opening up what other new doors that were
all
there
the people
prior.
she worked with that we talked to said, yeah, we knew she wasn't going to be with us for long.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. She would always find
And
the
she's
next
constantly
bigger,
over-delivering.
the next
Yes.
bigger
And you know
thing.
she's going to over-deliver for you and then look for the next
Well, and
place
just
to go,
saying
yeah.
yes, and she had this, like, people wanted to offer her things and opportunities and just wanted to be close to her for that, like, special magic she had. So, like, yeah, she had plenty to choose from and to say yes to. And she just did. She had the nuts to say yes to so many of
But at the
things,
expense of, I think, some personal relationships.
Yes.
You know, you can't be that career driven and then also be like a good friend to everybody and, you know, a good spouse and whatever. Like, it's just, you kind of have to decide that this is my thing.
Yep.
And if you're coming with me, like, you're going to ride along, but like, this is always going to be the thing.
And that's how it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there anyone that was not happy about the existence or of the film or the story that was told or the content of it? I mean, you show her death. It's not gruesome,
Right.
but you show. I
yes
cannot
and
believe
no.
that
I mean,
camera survived. That's
those
wild.
words are a little tough. They're like, you show her death, and
you show the
an
crash.
article said
Sure.
the same thing. But you got to be careful with that because you really, I mean, it's like one frame she's there and the next she's gone, and it's a cloud of dust, and
Totally
the camera's
true.
off the
Totally
body
true.
of the car.
But like, there's an onboard shot, and
Yes,
it's
right.
crystal
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
clear.
Here,
And it's you know, it's a.
you got to know what you're getting into,
Right.
but the distinction
It's gnarly.
is important
It's
there,
fucking
yeah.
gnarly.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
Yeah.
I think, you know, we lean into what would Jessi want? And based on what we know and our partnership on this film and the intention of the film. And it was to tell her story and tell it in a respectful way that showed the choices that the gravity of the choices that she actually made. And right up until the end, we weren't sure what would be in the film and what wouldn't be in that regard. But it's really about, does this, first of all, the data survived.
yeah, that's crazy.
That gave her the record.
Yeah, that's
And the
crazy.
footage survived that showed that she did everything she possibly could have done
Right.
to stop that car.
Right. No, I was going to get to that. Like, she was like very in control
Right.
of her actions.
It's not like 2016 where she's panicking a little
Yeah.
bit verbally, right?
I wouldn't have got back in
So
the car after that.
she now
Those
is like,
bushes- you hit the bushes once.
Right.
That
I'm
choice
done.
is a big
I'm
turning
done now.
point.
she
Yeah,
knows
yeah,
what she
yeah.
needs to do and she's doing that.
Yeah.
The main reason it's included is one, to show exactly she signed up for that and she knew the implications. Also, it showed the speed she was actually traveling, and it showed the ramifications of what's at the end of that lake bed.
Yeah.
And those shots are the thing that really show you can't help but have a level of respect and gravity for what she was truly choosing to do. And I think
Yeah.
it celebrates her audacity and bravery and courage.
You stand in awe of the forces at work, you know, at the end.
Yeah. It's when it goes well, it doesn't seem that hard.
Right.
You know, you go straight, you press the throttle, you press it further. At a certain point, when they tell you, you
Yep.
pull the parachute lever, the car comes to a stop, and that's that.
Right.
And, you know, it's only when it goes badly that you are like, oh.
It's like being a ship's captain, you know,
Right,
like
right,
97% of the time it's smooth sailing, but when a
Right.
storm hits, that's
Well,
when,
part of
you
that
know,
thing of
captains
being on
become
lake beds
captains.
is it's hard to have that perspective of speed. You know,
Right.
you've driven out there and you're not passing anything. Like
Right.
until the ground really starts moving under you, but there's like a leap from like, you know, 60 to 120 feels the same. And then 120 to 150 feels the same. And then 150 and above, and then I'm sure as she goes 400.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
even
that's a
from
good
the
point.
outside, like when
Yeah.
you see the car go across, because the camera's a mile away or whatever it is, like you know it's fast intellectually,
Yep.
but you don't like feel the speed.
It's
It's hard.
interesting.
But like when Kitty O'Neill crashed in that clip, that's when like the speed connects, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, she's going up the hill, continuing up the hill with under, you know, and just like tumbling.
Yeah, that
Oh my
cloud
God.
of dust goes
Right.
up and you realize, oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say when we did the episode on the Autobahn, we had a B7 and we got up to 170, whatever the top speed is, 178, something like that. And I remember being in the car, I felt the front of my brain turn off and I was just in the back. And time just kind of became elastic, right? Like things are slow and then super fast immediately. It felt that time space became elastic, but you're right. Out on the middle of the lake bed, I didn't travel the speed she traveled, but you don't have that proximity.
Sure.
And when you see it at the end and you see the end of that lake bed approaching, you, for the first time in the whole film, your heart sinks and you go,
the first time you really get it.
Oh my God, like she's moving. And the car had been decelerating, so she was probably at about half total speed at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done anywhere near this, but I did 211 miles an hour at Bonneville in a Jetta, a modified Jetta.
What are you doing in a Jetta?
With a parachute. It was like a Volkswagen like press event. It was pretty crazy. It had dog dish wheels and a cage, and like the intercooler literally went through a cooler of ice. Like it was pretty gnarly for
lemons.
For a fucking
what
Jetta.
What could go wrong?
It was like lemons, but it was built by Papadakis. Like it was not. It was not a no fucking around Jetta.
Yeah.
But it felt slow as shit until about 190, and then you're like, I'm about to crack 200 in a Jetta right now, and it got real serious real fast. You know, car starts moving around. You know, little bits of wind, and
and that's just it. Who are you in that moment, right? We're all pretty good people on dry land.
No, to be going 400
and
and hit the throttle harder is pretty crazy.
And not only throttle, afterburners.
Right.
Yeah, isn't it what I kind of realized after watching this, that the speed that you achieve in this jet car pretty much depends on how soon in your run you are willing to hit the afterburner. So the warm-up runs, she's kind of doing a mile and a half, and then afterburner. And in the really, really fast stuff, it's like within a half a mile.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like
the only
flying.
other option
In the
is
in-car,
kind
it
of
looks like flying.
Yeah.
Well, and she used to
carrier
describe
launch.
a point where like the afterburners kick in and it lifts a little bit and it smooths out, you know, and then it becomes even more disorienting in a way because you're not getting the feedback as much from just like on the ground.
Right.
And so, the disorientation of not having anything around. We discovered that the sound of it was much more communicative of how fast you were going for the movie than the visuals were because, as you say, you can't even... You're not passing.
It's like
can't
from the
even
outside,
tell,
200 and 400 look the same because there's a dust cloud either way.
Yeah. No, in that over the shoulder shot starts to get real gnarly at 400 or whatever it is, and it doesn't look like the car has any type of suspension, right? It's like a fixed.
A little bit. I think there's a little travel in it, but it's aluminum wheels.
Yeah.
So not on the rear wheels as much as I think the rear. Axle,
like the
arms
There's some flex in the body, I think, but that's about it. Yeah, it's not like on springs or anything.
Right.
It's this whole the whole thing is wild, and like super respect to Jessi. Like even in the crash, like that shot, and like I mean GoPro, if it wasn't so horrible, could make a commercial out of that. Like this fucking camera survived a 250 mile an hour crash. Like,
or at least
what?
the data survived. Yeah.
No, the camera was rolling. He picked up the camera off the ground. It was rolling.
We had 4 cameras, and 3 of them were destroyed.
I mean, it's crazy that camera survived. I mean, that's unbelievable. I've never heard of anything like that. And to still be recording, like holy shit,
it's pretty amazing.
The fact that I actually thought it was a really good setup, where he finds the camera first and then you go to the shot. That was actually a good piece of editing right there. I really liked that. It kind of prepares you for what you're about to see.
This is what you're about to.
Right. Yeah. And it's not gruesome. It's sad and it's brutal.
And I think that was
gruesome.
the big benchmark. It wasn't gruesome. It's gruesome. It's final, but.
But it's quick.
It's quick, and it was really included to give an appreciation for her.
Well, that's what my wife said watching it, because Zack kind of warned me. Zack was like, "Look, at 132, this gets gnarly," and he's like, "If you want to skip over it, that's where you're looking for."
Right.
And I made the decision, especially once I saw the guy found the camera. I was like, "All right, I'm watching this."
It's an act of trust, really. I mean, you have to trust that we're not going to take you down a road that's going to leave you totally traumatized at the end of it.
And my wife, who I did not warn about that, she was like, they find the camera, and then you show that, them prepping for that run, and she's like, "Oh my God, are we about to watch this?" And I was like, "I think we are." And she's going through procedures until a half a second before that impact.
Yep.
Is an unbelievable measure of calmness.
Yeah.
And I think for her, it shows the clarity and this, in some regard, simplicity of what happened. This is the story. This is what happened. There is no alternative version.
And it doesn't leave you like, oh, if we could only figure out, what
if
went
we had
wrong.
withheld it, they would open up a whole different can of worms.
Or if you didn't have it, Did not, you didn't. If you,
I mean, a good example is we've been compared favorably to Senna, which I guess you've probably seen. But
Senna's a great movie.
Yeah, and
Sad,
of course
but
we know
great.
how that ends as well. And there's kind of a moment where everything goes black. And you're like, wait a minute, what happened? And I couldn't decide as an audience member, did they just not have the footage because of the crash, or was this a choice they made because they didn't think I could handle it?
Yeah.
And that just left that question in my mind and kind of tainted the end of that movie for me because I was like...
They have it. They use it in the movie One, if you've seen One. It's one of my favorite racing documentaries. It's awesome.
They show the full clip
They
where
do.
he crashes?
Yeah, they do.
Is it gruesome or anything? I'm just wondering what the
It's a
decision
crash.
making
It's
process.
a big crash.
Yeah.
So there was a choice there made that, like, okay, we're going to spare the audience, and I was a little, I don't know, I felt a little insulted by that.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? I don't know. We interviewed Asif on the show before Senna came out, and it was great. I mean, he was very, very
I love the
cool.
movie, by the way.
But he then gave me. We talked about its existence, and he gave me a 2.5-hour director's cut of Senna, like on a USB stick.
Wow.
And I only ever saw the theatrical movie once, but I've seen the director's cut a bunch of times, and it's in the director's cut.
Okay.
They don't cut it out of that. And so I kind of forgot that it was cut out of the other one.
And I also wonder, with F1 being F1, like, did F1 have a say in that, or did...
Yeah, but his whole thing was a big F you to F1.
I know, but you never know who's in control of things once
totally.
the person's
Remember
gone,
we played the trailer? We tried to promote the movie. We played the trailer on the podcast, and then F1...
pulled it from YouTube.
F1 Formula One narked us for it. I think
brutal.
Asif's publicist went around and got it back, but it wasn't ideal. One of the other, in your film, I didn't really know the Kitty O'Neill story, so I'm glad you guys told that. It's a really interesting story, and in many ways, it's much sadder than Jessi's story because, it doesn't end in triumph and sacrifice. It really just it's unfortunately kind of goes out with a whimper. But how important was it, you think, to the film to tell as much of that story as you guys told? Because it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean,
It was a big deal from the beginning. I mean, when we first started talking with Jessi about this, even as we were rolling into shooting the list, the idea of like, this is Kitty O'Neill's record she's chasing. Who is she? What's the story? You scratch the surface, you find out she was the stunt woman. You find out she was deaf and had all these records, and her story just unfolds like a book. It's incredible. And so that was always the parallel story with this one. And we didn't quite know, we were in love with Kitty O'Neill because she's amazing. We didn't know the extent to which her private life and personal life would help us kind of fill in some blanks on Jessi or help us reflect Jessi's struggles a little bit emotionally, because they suffered from much of the same thing, this just sort of inability to live a normal life. Kitty, was subject to a form of abuse that was, really over the top, and Jessi's struggles were different, but they do reflect each other, and so it became even more important after Jessi passed because we couldn't go back and ask her any questions. And so now we're leaning into like, how does Kitty O'Neill fill in some of what Jessi's going through here? How does Kitty O'Neill face these circumstances, and what does that mean for what was going on in Jessi's head?
The one thing that the movie doesn't say, I mean, we learn that Kitty dies, but it doesn't say when in Jessi's timeline Kitty died.
So, Ed Shadle passed away
Right.
just 2 days prior to the lake bed 2018 in Kitty was a few months after.
Okay.
It was like November, I
between
think,
2018 when the panel came off the car, and then returning to the lake bed 2019 is when Kitty passed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It occurs in that point in the movie, but we don't really call out.
It does,
the
but
time frame.
you use like a bit of the newscast, and it says last week, and I'm like, I don't have a date to go off, so I want to know. But
that panel moment was great. Like, I don't want to tell people what happened, but just keeping that stuff shows like the glue of the team and how serious this shit is.
Yep.
You know, one little problem with a latch, like the smallest thing at that speed. I mean, it could be a small problem that just sends everybody home, or something else.
They ever find the panel?
I think there were pieces of it.
Yeah.
So did it
get sucked into the
Pieces
jet?
got
or did
into it, but not deep enough to really cause that much damage. But they didn't know, and there was no way of looking at it out there in the field, so they had to just call the whole thing off, put the caution tape up, and then take it home to look at it.
Yeah.
And then once they did, like, yes, pieces of it got in, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Yeah. The other thing with Kitty O'Neill is you glossed over it briefly. She, I guess, had this abusive boyfriend who took out a life insurance policy against her,
Holy
which is
shit.
wild.
That story runs so deep.
Yeah, and in the film, you know, they mention that her crash in this jet-powered Corvette may have been some type of sabotage. Was that ever? I mean, the crash was. She lived, but the car was fucked.
Yeah.
So was there any further investigation or result of that, or was that just kind of rumor?
Not beyond what was in the newspapers and the investigation that took place. Yeah, there were just, you know, I think it you know, Kai, who's speaking to that, there are people who are on the team that are there for the success of the car. And then there's the people who aren't on the team, and Duffy wasn't on the team, right? So, you know, I don't know. I don't think we'll ever know. But the way Kai tells the story and the way the investigation went and the newspapers printed it,
it seemed like
it was maybe shenanigans.
Right. When their assessment is like, we don't understand why this problem would have happened based on our engineering and our work on the team. This doesn't just
mechanical stuff didn't jive, and cones were moved, and so she was trying to deploy her parachutes like way too late into the run and that kind of thing.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's not good.
So if you're doing testing, right, and someone moves the brake line, the brake cones.
Yeah. That's crazy. And then you know, you talk about it. I thought it's a weird name drop in the movie that in her, what I guess was going to be her last race that never happened, Hal Needham shows up, of all people, the director of the Cannonball Run, who was also a stuntman, right? He was, and who decides that he is going to drive instead of her? The team owner?
He owned the car.
Oh, he owned the car.
Yeah,
I didn't realize
he
he
had
owned
the car
the car
built by William Frederick for himself to set the world land speed record, and they were going to sell like action figures. There was a doll company. It wasn't Mattel. It was somebody else. I forget who it was, but had a deal to make a doll of him, and ultimately it was their lawyers that issued an injunction against the team to prevent her from going over the 512. So Hal Needham was actually off shooting like Smokey and the Bandit 2 or something. I don't think he was even present on the lake bed, but the legal team came in and shut the whole thing down.
Wow.
Yeah, it's such a sad ending to that story, because it seems like
she was on the doorstep.
The system ultimately just beat her.
Yeah.
She could have, you know, there's a world where she could have had the overall record.
Yeah.
You know.
But in this case, she was like a test pilot almost, and he was like, "All right, thanks. I'm gonna go jump in this thing now."
And then, like, literally the day that it happened, it started to snow, shut the whole thing down. Hal never got his chance to go do it. They like wrecked the car, testing it for another run. It eventually got turned into another car, and he never did get his doll sold. And like 2 years later, Kitty, you know, comes out with her Mattel doll.
A fuck ton of money, like Buffalo Bills Super Bowl hats.
Right.
You know, they print both teams.
Atlanta Braves.
That's the example we give. It's like, sorry, you can't win this year. We already printed our T-shirts.
Yeah.
You know?
Dude, my old man used to be the CEO of Foot Locker. And fucking trust me, they print both.
Oh, I believe it.
I have some buried in the closet. I got a whole bunch of losing team swag that, like,
because you got to sell it on the way out the door, right?
Yeah, it's sad enough. You see that shit in like South America,
Right.
or wherever they
Right,
dump
right.
the boxes of stuff, and
Yep.
they're like, "Stop sending us your garbage, sirs." Fucking colonists.
Crashes
A lot of
the
brown
whole
shirts out
economy.
there.
Right? Yeah.
No, the Browns never made it far enough to print the
That's a good
shirts,
point,
man.
Yeah. Do you? I mean, there's now this team. Zach and I were talking about breakfast. It's what's it? Thrust SSC.
SSC2, right?
And they're trying
Bloodhound,
to
yeah.
Bloodhound
Right,
SSC.
Bloodhound too.
Yep.
Their financial situation always looks kind of like Aston Martin or Lotus. We need a new business daddy
Yeah,
ASAP.
they're well endowed.
And they're trying to go 1,000 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's possible? I mean,
it's possible. I guess the real question is where and for what.
That's what I was saying. Like, why? You know,
Right.
like I don't know what technology or lessons trickle from this down to anything else we used. And I'm sure there's an engineer out there who is screaming at the speakers, going, "Well, I mean, there's like it seems like it's mostly a thing to just do to you know climb. Why climb a mountain to do it?
Right.
But this just seems like it's
Break
a very
their own
expensive
record,
mountain.
right? They hold the
Yeah.
record. They don't have a lot of incentive to like chase it real hard,
Right.
you know. So I do feel like they're kind of geeking with technology for years at a time without, you know.
Yeah.
I think they've done some test runs, but I don't.
Probably a lot of side businesses to be had for braking technology, onboard computers, aerodynamics, things
Yeah,
that can
maybe.
be, you know, if you look at cars that get, you know, F1, for instance, right? How much of F1 makes it to the street, you know, 5-10 years later?
I mean,
KERS systems.
more
things
than
like
like
that.
electronics, cooling,
more
batteries,
than I
yeah.
think with land speed racing.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, probably.
I mean,
yeah. And it's
but
cool. It's
yeah.
supposed to be a cool thing
not-
that kids get into.
Jay Leno's
you know,
got a jet
like-
car, but that's
Right,
about it.
right,
Like,
right.
I don't know. Like, I don't know who else needs this.
Oh, it's public
Just the guys
jet
at the rock
trains
store.
and public
But like,
transport.
Yeah, but
you
like
know.
911s have active aero now, you know what I mean? And every car has ABS, and we've got adjustable, you know, traction control on a knob and all the high performance stuff. So
Right.
Yeah.
there's like. I know what you're saying, but like more than land speed racing for sure.
Yeah, I think the idea of like high-end technology trickling down is kind of a poor argument for doing it. I think you do
Well, it
it
depends how your
because
team
it's
is
cool.
structured.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think you do it
You
because
need
it's
one
just
lunatic
inspirational and
with
and
money,
that kind
and
of
then
thing.
another lunatic who wants to get in the car, and
I
maybe
think
it's the same lunatic.
The space to do it ultimately is what's going to limit them. They've been doing their testing in South Africa, and they have the same problems with lake bed conditions that you have anywhere else in the world. And it can be too dry or too wet or too bumpy or too, you know. And you know, and with the Eagle, it was that one little unseen thing underneath the surface that your team
Yeah.
doesn't pick up, or your scan doesn't pick up, or the Dragon Tires
It was
doesn't.
just
You
like
know,
a rock.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I mean,
as far as
yeah.
we know, kind of the top of a sort of buried, you know,
And
rock.
it was under the surface.
Yeah.
and the wheels were digging into the lake a bit. There's
A little
you know,
bit, yeah,
like an
yeah.
inch or so.
And they dial in the downforce on the nose for the sake of you know, it's like more stability is more downforce, but you're creating more drag, so it's a
Right.
little less fast, and you can kind of modulate how much risk you take with the upforce, downforce, with the canards on the front. So, and they had dialed in a little more actually for more stability for her. So if anything, she was pushing up against limitations in her speed that had been applied by the team or whatever. So there might have been a little digging in on the front. You know?
And do they? You said scan. Do they scan the whole course, or do some teams do that? Do they do that?
I mean, more like a visual scan or
Oh,
a scan
okay.
from
I
the
didn't know if you
air.
meant, like,
We
you know,
look at it
radar
with
for rocks
drones
or
and
some
stuff
shit.
like
Yeah.
that, but and they send teams to sweep it and that kind of thing. But no, there's not like a laser.
It's odd that the type of failure that car experienced resulted because it seemed like the wheels don't have brakes proper, do they? It's all shoot, right?
Pretty much. I think there's
The
a
rear wheels do.
The rears, right?
The
There's a
rears
caliper
do.
on the end.
the rear
So-
wheels have this like electromagnetic, like very futuristic braking system.
No.
Yeah.
Like a regenerative brake.
Kind of. It creates electromagnetic eddies. There's actually no parts that touch each other.
Oh.
And so they create a magnetic
Wow.
field in between, and it creates these eddies that exponentially slow it down. So
Well, maybe
the
there
faster
is
you
some
go
trickle
and the
down.
more
Give me
heat
some of that
applied, the more-
shit.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right.
Yeah. But you know, the people who work on that technology are obviously sensitive about, you know, the perception that would have failed her or whatever. We don't really know what happened. We know she couldn't slow down, and there's a lot of questions around that, and we don't have the answers. The team doesn't have all the answers.
The video doesn't really give a lot of indication.
Yeah, it gives you some,
mean,
but not all. If you
there's
could look
probably
the
some
other way,
data.
Someone that
you would learn something
understands.
new. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, like limited car control, right? Like
Right.
when she lifts off the throttle, weight settles forward, and that's when kind of we all realize that there's no front wheel.
Yeah.
Because the car settles onto basically the nose. Maybe the wheel's still in the, in the well, but you're experiencing that vibration. So it wasn't until she lifted off the throttle that front settles, and you find out something's off.
Yeah.
And so what those parts or that contact did for, because it's a pretty complex vehicle with the electronics and the hydraulics and fuel lines and the whole thing, you don't know. There's no way of knowing what was damaged in that moment.
Right.
Was
and
the steering?
They said one of the chutes was charred. So did that mean like, if you guys don't know this, that's fine. Like that was pulled, but Afterburner was still going, so it just charred the chute, and so like.
Correct.
One system couldn't shut down or something?
Whatever was happening, the car was still in either full military or Afterburner with a flame cone out the back. So when the parachute deployed, it was...
Just got
what was that term?
immediately.
The term full military was used a couple times without... I mean, I inferred what it meant.
Yep.
What does that exactly mean?
I don't know, but I think it has something to do with, if you've got... civilian or commercial aircraft that have, it's either fuel restrictions or speed restrictions
or sound possibly. Yeah,
so full military to me means
it's as fast as you can go without engaging the afterburner. And the
Right.
afterburner is blowing unspent fuel at the end of the combustion, or at the end of the turbines, and creates an extra pocket of thrust or whatever. So everything up to afterburner is your military throttle or whatever for just casual flying. I guess,
Cessnas don't have full military.
Right, yeah.
No, I hadn't thought about
Full
sound
civilian,
restrictions would probably be what I was like, because they said that and I'm like, well, this is a military plane. Isn't everything full military?
Right.
Like, no, that makes sense.
It seems like, quickly Wikipedia, it's
like impulse
it's full
power.
power but without afterburner.
Okay.
I think just it increases.
And
your
that plane they bought was a real piece of shit when they bought it. It looked rough.
It's a fixer-upper.
It was a real
Flip
fixer-upper.
this house.
These guys are hot rodders, man. They're not afraid
Yeah.
of
They're like,
replacing
yeah, the
some body
windshield will
panels,
handle Mach 2.
Yeah.
It's like, but you don't have one.
That was that. I mean, I love that part of the story. Digging up that old footage, that the 16 mil footage they have of the first
That was
time
pretty
they
cool,
saw it. I
actually.
mean, it was magic. To
and
see
the matching
this
of the tail number with the other.
Yeah,
That was wild.
With
these
the
guys
other
are like
archival stuff.
little boys deep down, and this is their, the audacity of their dream to chase this thing. It just speaks to, like, they were holding on to some kind of flame from deep down that this thing was going to fulfill.
Yeah, just for the little Easter egg for you, the guy in the kind of fire pants, the paramedic kind of fireman pants, when they discovered the GoPro camera. His father, he was one of the first responders on this team. His father actually flew that aircraft when it was in service.
Here. Oh, that's crazy.
There's pictures of himself as a kid in that cockpit.
He was one of the test pilots
crazy.
in the like Wright
Was that a
supersonic
coincidence?
program.
I think he sought out the team once he saw that they had discovered the tail number and that his dad had flown that aircraft. Because I think
wild.
the F-104 has a little bit of a cult following. And so they've got kind of a listing of all the ones that exist in the world. And I think he was connected in that way. And late in life, he decided to be, he decided to be a fireman, volunteer paramedic fireman. And so he became involved in the team.
That's so cool. I mean, it's too bad how it worked out.
No, right, but
I mean, it's a wild Easter egg that's in the movie. There's and we haven't, there's a lot of other stuff in there that we haven't talked about: motorcycles and Sturgis and off-road racing, and Jessi did a lot of that stuff. And
I want to ask a creative question. So, you guys talk a lot about her work ethic and how busy she was, and how it makes it really hard to like have a family and a relationship and stuff. But I think during the time of the run and a few years before that, she was, I believe she was with this guy Terry. So he was not included in the film. So it kind of left this myth of, not myth, but like showed that difficulty, which I totally understand, being that busy. Like,
Sure.
but why was that artistic choice made?
So over the years, there were a couple boyfriends that came to the lake bed or not. And her relationships were complicated, and some of it she shared with us. And in her public life, it wasn't something she shared or talked about. And so we honored that, where exclusion was the choice. If you include one, do you include them all? And then what film are you making? The kindest thing we could do is to make the creative choice for leaning in on her and focusing on her and her pursuits and her life.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
and he's there, in 2018, 2019. You see him in the movie. We didn't cut him out.
I just meant like he wasn't identified, and it wasn't like.
Right, we didn't make.
And your answer makes sense.
And he wasn't a talking head.
Right. Yeah. And to get into specifics of the difficulty she had with each of her boyfriends would have just been such a rabbit hole to go down, sort of as Graham said. So like, why would we get into this guy, if we didn't get into the others? It was definitely a choice to keep it more generalized, because it was a pattern that we saw repeat itself over the years that we knew her.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and Terry came into the picture fairly late in our relationship with Jessi. We had been working with Jessi for a long time. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Was it after the crash, the implication in the film is that people stayed on the lake bed for a while.
Couple days.
There was
a lot of work to do.
Yeah, what was that like, and what? Yeah, I mean, what work was being done during that time? I mean, was it literally sifting through wreckage? Was it
part of it? Yeah,
it was.
You had Jessi's family, her mother, stepfather there, experiencing extreme grief. And you have the team who had built this car experiencing deep grief and shame and regret. So you have these two camps, two flavors of grief happening simultaneously. And one thing that we tried to capture at the end is everybody went to work to honor Jessi. We have to find what we can to get her the record, show that she did what she needed to do, and investigate this to figure out what happened. And so lots of care went into investigating the scene, picking through the rubble to find the drives and anything that had any information on it that could get her this record, because she's gone, right? And everyone had to reconcile that in their own way, in their own time. And it really just became about honoring her. What can we find out or discover that is going to show the world that, is there something to know that will help us reconcile this? And is there anything we can find to give her the credit she deserves?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't want that to be for nothing, I guess.
Right.
Like, if there's evidence out there, you got to know that it's out there, or
So we transitioned basically from film crew to flew the drone over the whole.
Yeah, went to
run.
Forensic mode.
Yeah.
To find
recovering
capture
cameras
it, because we didn't know. Again, for the first few years we were out there was no cell service. So cell service was like kind of a new novelty. And once we found out that the information had gotten to the outside world, it's a really remote place, but we weren't sure if people were going to show up.
Did they?
No.
TMZ called him, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the first phone call Graham got was from TMZ.
They called Terry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So TMZ had Terry's number, and they called him.
Gotta wonder why TMZ had Terry's number.
I don't know.
They don't just have your number.
They had his number.
Yeah.
And they called, and he, I was standing with him, and he handed me his phone. He said, "Answer this." I answered it. It's TMZ. So.
Yeah, we couldn't just pack up and go home.
No.
There's a whole crash site to manage. There's a whole, investigation to unfold, and it took like 3 days of kind of just handling business before people could really pack up and go. I mean, a few people were just like, "I got to get the heck out of here."
Right.
Like Cam just left, but.
Yeah, I think it was. There's a weird thing that happens out there where it's the lake bed and then the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think people were ready to go face the rest of the world. The crash scene was dark. the energy was really just catastrophic energy. And it just wasn't Jessi, right? It just wasn't the vibe that we had with Jessi when she was around. So it was like she was gone. The energy was really dark. It was a catastrophe. We all went back, you see late in the film, we went back for a memorial the following year. And that's when I think everybody kind of like, she was back. This place is where she achieved her dream. And there was reverence to that. People had healed a little bit. The chaos had died down. Didn't make it any easier, but at least, now there's this place in the desert where like her energy is, where that's where she lives, in the canyons and on the desert. And
it was a good place, a way to lift the darkness off of that place, because it's so special for everybody who went out there year after year. Like the Alvord has a really powerful kind of magic on people. Something about being out there, it's something that you chase and you come back year after year. So that would have been terrible if that had been the last, feeling that the team was left with. So to come back a year later and be able to kind of lift that and bring Jessi's positive spirit back, I think it just did a huge amount of good for everybody. And
the literal blackness of the crash is gone.
Yeah.
It's been washed away.
And the light comes through the clouds. It came through right just at that moment, and it lifts the film at the end too, to know that all these people you've gotten to know and kind of become family with over the course of the movie, like you process it with them, and then you get to be there when it's lifted.
I mean, it's the true definition of bittersweet, right? Even with the film coming out, it's receiving a good response, but that's not what it's about. It's about Jessi, the world knowing who Jessi is and what her mission was. She accomplished it. She accomplished her mission. It just didn't end the way anyone wanted it to. The team that built this car accomplished their mission. They, in all respects, have a ton to be proud of, but that's clouded with it didn't end the way anybody wanted it to. And that's the hardest thing for everybody involved to reconcile, is that they did it. It just ended terribly. And so does that erase 20 years of hard work and camaraderie and development and dreaming?
It would be a harder question to answer if she hadn't set the record.
Right.
We have the luxury of the fact that she did it to hang on to. If she didn't, we might be asking different questions.
I mean, your film title would be different, and I don't mean that as a joke. Like it would, and to me, she's such an important person to women, little girls, and I think also just like men in the car world. I mean, her thing of like, I had to win 10 times before they'd start giving me credit that like I know what the fuck I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like that's totally valid. And by having the title The Fastest Woman, I think it will get more eyes and more people will click that thing to watch the movie than if it just said like, the woman who tried to go really fast. Like,
well,
it just doesn't have the impact.
In the movie, she writes on the car in dust, fastest woman on earth. That's 2013.
Yeah.
So we talk about manifesting, right?
Like she knew, I'm going to get it. Yeah.
Nothing was getting in the way of that for her.
Yeah.
And ultimately, her platform has expanded. The movie is putting her in front of eyeballs that never would have seen her or gotten to know her.
Right. Because
So,
I think she's super well known in our world.
Yeah.
And I think her foundation is really well known in this world too. But outside of the this little car bubble we live in.
Yeah. The film and the foundation in her name are really like beacons of stories of courage and opportunity for young women, and that's it. They go hand in hand to really make opportunity and empowerment available to young girls, and that's why she did it.
Yeah.
That's why she was doing it the whole time. Her stance was, I'm just an average person, so if I can do this, clearly you can. And she really meant that. And I think she was one of the rare people who was really about championing. She did it herself, and she prioritized herself being the one in the seat taking the risks, but she really did it as an example for other women.
It's a great movie. I really thought it was very well made. It's obviously sad because we knew her and we know how it ends from the first frame, but I thought it definitely it leaves you feeling proud of what she did, and I think it because it doesn't have the open-ended questions about the crash or the record. It's interesting that you can still get a record even if you crash and die.
Yeah.
She was right, and she was with us when she said it.
I guess that's where they draw the line, right?
Well, because the record's set in that middle mile,
in
right?
that moment.
So whatever happens after that or before it is just
yeah.
And it's Guinness too. Right. So any of the debate around sanctioning bodies or anything like that, this is recognized by Guinness.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, I know it's gotten it's dark and sad and we're asking questions, but it's shot well, and the parallel storytelling that happens and the investigation into Kitty and her going to meet, it's very good storytelling.
No, thank you.
And it does show how important I think Kitty's journey was to Jessi to figure out why am I doing this? Why do you do this? The parallels between them, and it's not. It didn't feel fabricated. She's getting pushed to go see this. She's probably gonna go out there one way or another.
Yeah.
She's I'm going to South Dakota in the middle of fucking nowhere. You want to get a camera?
Her and
we
Kitty
all got together on that immediately.
Yeah, her and Kitty had these crazy emails where Jessi was inviting Kitty out to the lake bed to witness it, right? And it's not an easy place to get to. And you saw how frail Kitty was. So in the years leading up, it was this back and forth of Jessi and Kitty talking.
Wow.
It just wild. I mean...
well, and we had one idea of Kitty O'Neill, and we didn't know she had spiraled off the way she had or whatever. So when we walked into that, it was kind of news to us. We knew Kitty's got some issues, but we didn't quite know the extent of it. Yeah, and she's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, but no, your feedback it's important because I know you both knew and loved Jessi, and also we would expect criticism of the movie if it right, but just that it landed the way it did. To us, I think, is everything. It's just about honoring her story and just grateful that it landed the way it did with you both.
Yeah, and putting her story into context as well.
And in her words.
Yeah, and there's a lot of media of Jessi, so there's a lot to work with, which is helpful.
But the things that are most truthful and important for her are the ones that aren't performative. Right? It's her sharing her truth and her vulnerability, and that's ultimately it. And we wanted to make a film that, there's no room for alternate realities or trolls. She says it's in her words, and you see it play out, and it happens just how she said it was going to happen, And so making something that stands on its own was important for us.
Yeah. Do we have anything on the Patreon, Zach?
There's only 3 questions, which we may have already...
Did we already cover?
Answered. Cover that. And Jimmy Utterstrom just asked, what left the deepest impressions with you two working both with Jessi and on the film? I think we covered on the film, but just working with her.
Deepest impressions. That's
I mean, you pretty much you mentioned that she was basically able to manifest her own, future.
Yep.
I think it's the people she attracted to her, by and large, were great people. It got complicated when things were romantic, and that's a whole other wing of the conversation. But by and large, the people from her world, whether it's off-roading, whether it's welding, whether it's the build shows, just this whole community she built around her, those people would lay down in the road and take tires for her. They just, there's a whole tribe of people out there that is so dedicated to her, from even a short interaction or just some small, way that she made them feel seen or heard or whatever. Yeah. So I was amazed at the opportunities that came up for her just because of these great people that were attracted to her, just by being who she was.
I think counter to what people would think about her being busy and running around and moving quickly, she really gave great care to the people in her life and consideration, and would show up with small gifts and tokens for them, things like that. She would express, gratitude. She was very kind, she was very gracious, but her ability to make impact in a very short amount of time. As I was at the foundation booth out at King of the Hammers, and a girl stopped by with a friend, and I said, did you know who Jessi Combs was? And her face started to quiver, and she started crying. I said, well, judging by your reaction, I can tell you did. And she goes, yeah, I came out to King of the Hammers, and I was trying to come see Jessi. She was on her way running back to her race car, and she stopped, and she took a knee, and she sat with me, and she asked me what my dreams were and what I wanted to do with my life. And we talked for what seemed like a long time. When the race is about to start, she's got to get in her race car. And I said, how did that impact you? She goes, I'm a welder for SpaceX now.
Holy shit.
It's just like, and I can only talk about this now without crying because we've just been with the content for so long. So much catharsis from all of these stories. But it's that story times a million that we just saw happen time and time again. She take a knee, make eye contact, make impact, and that girl leaves on a different trajectory.
That's
My
amazing.
daughter included, Chris's daughter, like, she's effective in that way. And again, like, now our only hope is that the film can now be what speaks for her and makes that impact.
I mean, that's truly like anyone who breaks barriers, like they can have an impact on people, and it trickles down, and 10, 20, 30 years later, all these other flowers have sprouted from like one seed sort of. That's amazing.
That's awesome. That's a good place to end. Thank you guys so much for coming in. Fastest Woman on Earth is streaming on HBO right now. Get it where you get fucking HBO. Get it where you get The Sopranos.
Get it on HBO.
How did that happen, by the way? HBO. Why HBO? I don't know how that process works.
Yeah.
Never sold a film to a network before. I don't know.
We partnered with Lightbox first, and then we took it out to all different options, different streaming outlets, and really the team at HBO that got the film in ways that we didn't kind of see other people getting it. It was a team of women, and they just got the film that we were looking to make, and they understood that, and we landed where it landed is where it started.
Nice,
really. And so that's ultimately it. Was who was the team that was going to let us make the film that we were intending to make based on our partnership with Jessi, and that's really what it came down to.
And they pounced on it financially. I mean, they showed their commitment to it and their faith in us by just outbidding the competition. So, and it felt good with the people that we had spoken to. So yeah, it seemed like a good home for it. It's a place for premium content. And, we always wanted this to elevate beyond your average TV doc. And the appeal of it is much broader. So we wanted to get out of necessarily the automotive universe, and like you could have gone down kind of a Discovery Channel route and kind of put it in a lane, which is great that they have those, but this movie always felt like it needed to exist outside of that.
Yeah,
it's
totally
not.
Agree.
It's not a car movie per se.
Yeah.
I mean, it has that. It has that. It's a car movie adjacent, but it's a more human story than a car story for sure. And of course, the Jessi Combs Foundation.com is you can find where to watch the documentary. You can read about Jessi. You can see about their scholarship program and buy some merch to support
get
it.
the polka dot bandana.
Get the polka dot bandana.
Make a donation.
Yeah. Thank you guys, Chris and Graham, for coming in.
Both.
We really enjoyed the movie.
Thank you. Thanks for watching it and being very thoughtful in the way you've
it was a great movie. We really, really enjoyed it, and I hope you guys make more movies. I want to see what you do next.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks.
Thanks, everyone, for listening today. We appreciate you, and I'll be back tomorrow with Randy Nonnenberg, founder and CEO of Bring a Trailer. We're talking about car auctions tomorrow. It'll be a little more lighthearted, I think. But
Stories to be had.
Stories to be had there as well. Have a good afternoon. Bye.